Perfect. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning.
Tell us all about you.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Hopefully. Perfect. Okay, so my name is Claire and I run the Waltham Forest Cloth Nappy Library. So despite what that says, I'm sure most of you are probably Waltham Forest based, but I offer advice, hire kits to anyone sort of, well, beyond North and East London. So I'm a mum of one. My son is 9. He's next door. Hopefully we won't hear him. He's screeching with his friends at the moment online. And I started using cloth nappies on him when, well, I bought all my nappies about 10 years ago, in fact, because I bought my nappies when I was pregnant with him. There were no libraries, so it was just a matter of just choosing and picking the things that I thought might work and doing my own research, etc. So when he moved towards potty training, I had all these nappies and didn't really know what to do with them. And by that stage, some of you may have used sling libraries. They were in existence, and nappy libraries had started to develop also. So I decided to use my nappies as well as my little bit of knowledge and skill to set the library up. So the library is about 7.5 years old. One of the things what I'll do today is do a little bit of a demo, but obviously, some of you may be using cloth nappies already. I know, Nissa, you'd bought some. Some of you may just be completely overwhelmed. You've done research. You don't even know really where to start. Some of you might have your Real Nappies for London voucher and be thinking about where to buy that, or spend it rather. So hopefully I can help you with some of those questions, or if not, you can message me at my page, you can email me, and I can make that information available for you. So part of what I do, obviously, as I said, is the demos, and unfortunately, because of current circumstances, we're not able to offer those at the moment. So they were on a monthly basis in Leighton, a lovely cafe called Cuckoo Lala. So we've gone online. So if you are, at the end of this video, you're still struggling a little bit, I can do Zoom demos, but also I have a YouTube channel now, which has loads of videos of me chatting about all sorts of nappies. So that's another resource that you're more than welcome to use. So a rough outline of what I'm going to talk about is essentially the thing that really most people get caught up with or not sure about is the types of nappy and the differences between all the different types, because it feels like when you go online, there's just so many. The bits that are in a nappy, so what bits do you need, what bits you don't need? Washing, the other big question really for most parents, and maybe a little bit if we've got time about how to put nappies on and things like that. So hopefully we'll cover those things and there'll be time for questions. So to start, so I've got loads of my nappies here. So if people do want to look at a particular nappy, please ask and hopefully I'll have it to show. So when most people are looking at cloth nappies, as I said, there seems to be lots of types, brands, different things in the nappy, different types of absorbency. And if you go and ask on any of the groups, you'll get probably a whole page of recommendations and ideas and thoughts, and it can sometimes be just completely overwhelming. Cloth nappies are really not that dissimilar to disposables. They have the same bits in them. So if you think about what you've got in a disposable nappy, you've got something waterproof. That's this bit here. So on any cloth nappy, you need something waterproof. As you can imagine, without that, it's going to be a complete disaster. Turn the nappy around to look at the inside. This bit here, it's very difficult to see online, but I'll hold it a little bit closer. This bit is the bit that sits next to the baby's skin. And this bit is what we call the stay dry layer. So you think about in a disposable, we talk a lot about stay dry. And this is what basically protects the baby from the wet fabric that is inside, the absorbency. So this is a Mio Solo. This is a really popular nappy. It's available in supermarkets, so lots of parents try this out, maybe pick it off the shelf when you go shopping. It's an all-in-one. So as you can see, everything is attached. It's a one-piece nappy, very much like a disposable. So that tucks inside. That's the absorbent part that I just showed you there. That happens to be microfiber. And that nappy is ready to go. So So the nappies that we're looking at here, we've got, as I said, the waterproof bit, the absorbent bit that's inside, and then the third part is the stay dry layer, fleece liner, or just the bit of fleece or polyester that sits next to the skin. For a functional nappy, actually all you really need is something waterproof and something absorbent. Obviously the stay dry bit is going to make your baby more comfortable. Most parents don't really want wet fabric next to their baby's skin because the absorbent part of the nappy gets very, very wet. So having that there, whether it's already in the nappy or you can add it, just helps baby feel a bit more comfortable. All-in-ones have the absorbent part and the waterproof part sewn together. So this is a slightly smaller nappy. This is a newborn nappy. Again, all in one. Everything is sewn together. One piece. That whole thing goes on your baby. Take it off when it's ready to change time. Put it in your wet bag or your bucket and wash it when you're ready. All-in-ones are the most popular nappy system at the moment, just because they look really easy to use and are most similar to disposables, really. So this nappy looks pretty much the same. Again, waterproof bit, often really lovely bright patterns and colours. Again, stay dry lining. This is a pocket nappy. So when you saw the first nappy at the beginning, we had that sort of opening there. In a pocket nappy, the absorbency is separate. So what you have is two parts. You have your absorbent bits here, which is what's going to soak all the wee up. And then you have what we call your shell, which is your waterproof fabric sewn together with your fleece lining. So when you put the nappy together, it's one piece, but it allows you to change up what you have in your nappy. Because as babies grow, as they change, as they reach toddlerhood, often they start to do some pretty mega wees. And actually what you find is you need something more absorbent in your nappy than what it's come with sometimes. So being able to take it apart means you can stuff extra bits in, you can take out stuff you don't like, but also drying, which we'll come on to later. Taking things apart just helps with drying. You can take these bits, the shell bits, the waterproof bits dry super quick. The absorbent bits may need a bit of extra help. So being able to take it apart just means it dries a bit more quickly. So that's second system. The third system is an all-in-two. So the all-in-one was the nappy I showed you at the beginning, with everything sewn together. The all-in-two looks slightly different, but that's one bit. Difference being these pop apart. So you have shell, this is just waterproof material, this is absorbency, and you pop them together, put on your baby. When it comes time to change, sometimes if the wrap isn't soiled, you can pop a fresh one in and away you go. So some parents love this system because it just means you've got that flexibility of not having to buy loads of these, buying quite a few of these, drying again. It's brilliant because you can separate everything out, and hopefully these dry a bit quicker when they're not attached to something else. So those three systems to start with are the all-in-one, the pocket, and the all-in-two are nappy systems that we'd kind of generally recommend for daytime. They are fairly absorbent, so they work for younger babies as well as toddlers as well, and babies are fairly heavy wetting. But often, if parents want to use cloth at night, they don't offer the right amount of absorbency, and you can't put loads of absorbency in them just because it doesn't work for nighttime. The other thing with these is that obviously it's one bit of elastic, and as some of you know, those of you with young babies, poo can be somewhat explosive when they're tiny, and so having a system where you've got that extra reliability for nighttime, for a newborn, if you're going on a long journey, if you're wearing a baby in a sling, can be a massive advantage. And that's where the two-part nappy comes in. So you're thinking, well, you've mentioned the all-in-two, what's the difference? This is the nappy. So as you can see, all this is absorbent fabric. So this goes around your baby. And if any of you have spoken to older relatives about cloth nappies, they'll probably mention terries. This is really similar to a terry, but it's just got elastic with Velcro fastening in it. That goes on your baby. and then your waterproof bit goes over the top. So you have the elastic in the nappy, and then the elastic in the wrap. You have a massive amount of absorbency to begin with. So often this system is perfect for a newborn where you're changing quite frequently, but you can add absorbency in. We'll talk about that in a moment. But this is actually a newborn or a small size nappy. It's quite bulky, and this takes a long time to dry. Things that are absorbent, like natural fibres, will take a long time to dry. But this can't be beaten. All the other systems have their place, but this is the most reliable, really, of all the systems, but the bulkiest, unfortunately, and the one that takes a long time to dry, which in our lovely weather that we have at the moment can be a bit of a pain if you haven't got access to outdoor space. What these systems all have in common, the 4 systems, is at the bare minimum, something waterproof, something absorbent. That's all you need in your nappy for a functional nappy. And as I said at the beginning, the stay dry bit, if it's not in your nappy, you can add it. So some of you may have come across liners. Liners are essentially bits of micro fleece. Some look really lovely and fleece. Some are just kind of patterned flat fleece, or disposable liners. And they just sit in the nappy, and again, they provide that barrier. They provide that layer between your baby's skin and the nappy to stop the baby feeling the wetness. And obviously, as your baby gets a bit older, once they're on solid food, helps with getting the poo out of the nappy before it goes in your wet bag or your bucket. All the nappies I've shown you and all the nappies I have here, different brands, different make different sorts of nappy. So you might come across, say, Motherese is a brand. They make all-in-ones, which are very popular at the moment. That one. All-in-twos, two-parters. Some brands make pockets. Some make just focus on all in 2 parts. So it's about identifying the types of nappy that you might want to use, and then going and having a look online, and then just trying to identify what brands might suit you. One of the things that often again gets a bit confusing is, well, okay, I want an all-in-one, but what absorbency do I want inside that nappy? So just to make it very, very basic, there are 2 types of absorbency in cloth nappies: man-made microfiber versus natural fibres, which is cotton, bamboo and hemp. Those natural fibres will always be more absorbent, and you don't have the issue of the shedding of microplastics. But microfiber has its place. Quick to dry, quick to absorb. So often parents use it because they don't have access to drying space, or they just want something that they're not gonna have to kind of have hanging around the house for days and days and days. With cloth nappies, you may have noticed some of the nappies have looked slightly different sizes. So one of the other confusing things is sizing. So these happen to be the same nappy, but this one here is a newborn size, and this one here is birth to potty. So one of the things that I think is really confusing is, well, birth to potty, can't I just buy those nappies, and will they not just last from the time my baby's born to the time that my baby potty trains? Generally, no. Again, those of you who've had your babies, most babies are pretty tiny, and they tend to have very skinny little legs and sometimes very skinny little tummies. And obviously, for a nappy to be reliable, you need to get a good fit around the leg. Birth to potty nappies are designed to fit babies up to about 15 kilograms, and they change size by all these poppers at the front. So that's its biggest. But even when they're at their smallest, many parents find they can't get a good fit on their newborns, and they're a little bit bulkier, which means that actually it can be really off-putting. for you when you're having your first baby, when you feel like that they're just all nappy with these tiny little legs sticking out, or that you can't get clothes over the top, which in the summer's not a problem. But so newborn nappies or sized nappies exist for when your baby is newborn, or maybe just isn't big enough for birth to potty. And I recommend babies, you think about birth to potty nappies from about 4.5 to 5 kilograms, because that seems to be the weight at which most birth to potties begin to fit. Before that time, newborn nappies exist. They're expensive. If you're thinking about buying enough, if you're going to use them from when your baby arrives to maybe when they're big enough for the bigger size. But there are different options, cheaper options to if you wanted to use cloth from birth. So things like a terry square, which are coming back into fashion. This is a massive one, but you can get tiny, tiny ones of those. Or if you've watched any of my videos, pre-folds. These are essentially rectangular pieces of cotton that can be folded in different ways to go onto your baby, and you just pop a wrap over the top. Or muslins. Muslins are perfect newborn nappies. Fit really, really trimly, are easy to wash and dry. You probably have them anyway, and loads of them, because muslins do a massive, that's something that people tend to buy. You just pop a wrap over the top and away you go. So there's cheaper options if you want to use cloth from birth. Not everybody does. And I love nappies. I obviously am very passionate about them, but there are bigger priorities than using cloth nappies when your baby is just born. So often when parents borrow kits from me, great. If you want to use cloth from birth, that's absolutely brilliant. But essentially there are much more important things. Your sleep, your health, your baby's feeding, all those things. So it's about kind of be gentle on yourself and taking it easy. So you've got your nappies, or you're thinking about getting some nappies, and the other question that comes up is washing. Now, washing is, I don't know, the word controversial is probably a little bit strong. When my child was little, my son was little, the way we washed nappies then is very different to how we do now. And that's just because the ideas about kind of what we need, well, what you need to wash nappies is how machines work, and everything else has changed. Washing nappies, they're probably going to be the dirtiest thing you put in your washing machine. So they need a good amount of detergent, a good long wash, and essentially enough water in the machine to give them a thorough clean. If you've been online, you might have come across different groups that have different ways of building washing routines. I'm part of the UK Cloth Nappy Library Network, and our routine, our suggestion is essentially you just give your nappies a quick rinse or a quick wash, and then a long wash on hot, 40 or 60 usually, with a full dose of detergent. When they're ready, when they've washed, take them out, and then ideally air dry or line dry. But obviously people I have a heated area, they're fine on that. Tumbling, you need to be a bit more careful about. But essentially it doesn't have to be complicated. You can wash other things with nappies. So some people will wash their baby clothes in with them, or their towels in with them, or anything that's a little bit soiled. They don't need special detergent. So whatever you're using for your family is usually fine. Some brands talk about using non-bio only, but that's a bit controversial. I won't go into that. Cloth wipes, if you're using those, pop them in with the nappies. They're brilliant cloth wipes. I mean, they are really, nappies can be a bit tricky. These save so much money, and they're just so straightforward to use. And your baby's clothes can wash with them, so it doesn't have to be complicated. But obviously there are differences between cloth and disposables, otherwise I wouldn't exist, other libraries wouldn't exist. And generally we exist, the library systems networks exist to help people, kind of support people to use cloth nappies. So for me, I am not absolutely anti-disposable. They're great, and I think often there are times when I've used disposables, there are times when they're an absolute necessity. But and so essentially if people borrow nappies from me for my trial kits, if they return them and they haven't used them, or they've decided that's not for them, that's brilliant. because you haven't gone and spent hundreds of pounds on cloth nappies that just don't work for you or your baby. And yes, selling them on is, there's lots of, I have a group on Facebook where people sell secondhand nappies locally. There's lots of groups nationally on Facebook and other social media sites where people can sell nappies. And at the moment, because nappies are so popular, it's really easy to sell nappies on. So trialing them, just getting a few, just seeing how it goes is, just being gentle with it. One a day is an awful lot of nappies over a year or 2.5 years if your baby's in nappies for that long. That's my kind of a slightly basic demo. I mean, there's loads of other things I could talk about, but I think sometimes it's more useful for me to kind of have a chat with people and see what people's experiences are, what you've kind of, where the confusion is, and I can answer those questions if that's all right.
Brilliant, Claire. I don't know if that was, good for you ladies, but that was very illuminating, just to understand the different systems. You're exactly right. I've been on the groups and I've been, there's just so many options, it feels like, but when you break it down to the function, then you're just thinking it's brands really, isn't it? It's more just,
absolutely, yeah.
That's so super helpful. I'm just aware of time as well, because we've only got you for another half hour, so we're gonna utilize the time. It's brilliant. I have some questions, but I'm just gonna let everybody else go first.
Perfect.
Go ahead, ladies. Anybody like to ask anything, either about newborn or bigger, or whatever you want to ask? Go, Olivia.
I have a question. Hi, thanks Claire, for going through all that. That was really interesting actually, and like way more informative than anything I've looked up online with all the different systems. Good. I've got a whole bunch of different cloth nappies, so we decided to just like buy a couple different ones just to try them out, and we're sort of slowly starting to try them now. But May has quite a bit of eczema that goes sort of like all over her skin. And when I try, we've been starting with some of the pre-folds, just because of how often we're having to change nappies. So just thought that would be just quick and go. And I found after like a couple uses of them that it flared up her eczema a bit on her legs. So I've been a bit funny about going back to them, even though we only tried like one of the types that we had. But I don't know if you know much about like sort of eczema and cloth nappies and all this, because we've been using the Eco by Natty disposable ones, and they've been working really well. So I'm just a bit like, about swapping to it if it's going to flare up her eczema.
No, absolutely. I think one of the things with two things really is with cloth nappies, they fit slightly different to disposables, which means that when you fit them, and it's difficult on a tiny baby, you fit up into the knicker line. But sometimes, often with little ones, making the adjustment from disposables to cloth nappies can be really tricky. I had the same issue. My son didn't have eczema, but when I used the nappies on him, he started getting all this dry skin, and I was like, right, this is not the nappy, this is the nappies, I'm going to go back into disposables. And actually, as he got a bit older and his skin was less sensitive, it was not a problem. The other thing is products to wash them in, because obviously washing nappies, you what are you using to wash them?
We've got like an e-cover non-bio that we use for all our clothes and all our things anyway, so we just carried on using that.
Sure. E-cover is not recommended for cloth nappies. Another complication. This is where it gets a bit complicated, because essentially some people have very, very particular pros and cons. So the nappy lady, for example, she actually believes that e-cover is, she feels it builds up in the nappies, and actually it can actually cause sensitivities. So if you mix that in with possibly with wee, that may be one thing. The other thing is, what wraps are you using over the pre-fold?
We were trying the Bambino Mio ones. Like they have like a trial pack you can buy. So we bought that with the pre-fold.
So there are other things that some it's rare, but some babies do show a sensitivity towards the waterproofing on most nappies is polyurethane laminate, PUL, towards that. So some parents will do things like either switch from a polyurethane laminate wrap, the waterproof bit, to something like wool or fleece over the top, because that can actually, particularly on the legs, if the elastic's sitting on the leg and it's damp, can obviously cause irritation. And obviously in the early days, you do need to change fairly frequently, just because obviously it's a wet nappy. there are a couple of things that you could try, but also some babies will show sensitivity to a particular wrap or a particular nappy which they don't show to others. So you could try other things, but you just need to get the elastic right into the knicker line, which is hard on a tiny one, so it's off of the leg, because when it's on the leg where they're moving, the elastic starts to rub and can cause further irritation.
Okay.
Some parents switch to things like eco eggs, which aren't recommended for cloth nappies, unfortunately, but also maybe thinking about something like Circare or Waitrose Neutral, I think it's called, or Zero. So something like that, which, because the product's going to stay in the nappy, you know, machines are good at rinsing, but maybe thinking about some products for sensitive skin, because if it's only in the nappy area, I mean, the other thing is also, I mean, there's loads of different ideas I could have, like silk liners are brilliant for very sensitive bottoms, rather than fleece. So maybe trying that. But you're more than welcome to message me and I can kind of run through those ideas.
Great.
But just, yeah, trying a few different things might help.
Mix it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Awesome. Who would like to go next, ladies? Anybody else? Go on, Claire.
Yeah, so I've got a question. So it sort of relates to how in terms of comfort for babies, how the cloth nappies compare to the disposable ones. It isn't something I'd particularly thought of until with breast pads I had nice eco-friendly bamboo ones, and then I got thrush, so I was using disposable ones whilst I had thrush, and what I found is that actually the disposable ones were much more comfortable and stayed much drier for much longer, which made me think, oh, is that the same with nappies? So in terms of for the babies, are the cloth nappies, are they as comfortable for them, and are they kind of pulling that wetness away from their skin and keeping it right away from them as well, or not? Do you need to change them more often, I suppose?
You do. I mean, I think if we think about the advice for any baby in the newborn phase, the recommendation is to change any baby, regardless of nappy type, between 8 and 12 times in a 24-hour period. So actually, the advice is you're changing probably, 2 hourly, possibly 3 hourly. Cloth nappies, I don't think, are as dry. However, I think one of the things I think that obviously disposable nappies sell is the dryness factor. Now, when a baby's born, they've been in a wet environment for 9 months, and actually that dryness, most babies are absolutely fine and comfortable in cloth nappies, and there's no indication, for example, with rash, that they're more likely to cause a rash. Some parents don't use any form of liner in the nappies at all. I recommend PEP to do that, just because I think many parents, like you're expressing, there is that concern of, I don't really want this wet fabric next to my baby's skin. But the liners do a really good job of allowing this stays fairly dry next to a baby, and so because the wee and all the liquidy components of the poo pass through this into the dry part. But yeah, you are changing more frequently, and that's not just because of that, it's just because essentially it's good practice to change regularly anyway, but also most cloth nappies just aren't going to, unless night nappies are sort of slightly different, but most nappies you use in the day, because babies are moving around, they're feeding regularly. 3 to 4 hourly is probably the maximum we'd recommend. But babies will tell you. I hear stories of some parents who say that their baby actually is actually fairly uncomfortable at night in a particular cloth nappy, and they add a fleece liner, and that solves that issue. So I think it's something to consider. But also, yeah, I think you are changing more regularly and everything else. But anecdotally, the idea of if we think about the end of the nappying journey, when you're coming to the point where you're actually potty training your child, you're doing the reverse, because actually what you need to teach your child is to recognise what it feels like to go to the toilet and what happens when they get wet pants or wet underwear. So anecdotally, babies come out of nappies more quickly, possibly, if they're in cloth nappies, because they haven't lost the connection between what it feels like when they're doing a wee or a poo, whereas in disposables, that connection's a little bit, because it feels so dry that they don't know. That's anecdotal. there's no evidence on that. My son was out of nappies at 2, but friends of his were out of nappies at 3 and beyond. So there are pros and cons to that, really, but it's something to consider. And obviously liners work pretty well to wick away the moisture. So most babies don't have very, very wet bottoms.
Perfect, Claire. That was really interesting. Yeah, I never thought about you don't think about the next stage, the potty training bit. Anybody else, ladies? Anybody like to ask a question? Go on, Rachel.
2 questions. The first one just about the liners.
Yeah.
Are they disposable? Are there some that like catch the poo and you can chuck that bit of it in the loo?
Yeah.
Or are they like
So these are disposable ones. Most supermarkets locally sell these. So these basically some are more papery than others. So these will sit in the nappy. And yeah, but for an older baby, for where baby's on solid food, that ideally the poo is deposited nice and neatly on the liner. Now, no liners are flushable. Regardless of what it says on packaging, we know that these do not break down. In fact, some people end up putting these in the machine and they come out looking pretty much the same. They don't degrade in the same way that toilet paper does. So the whole thing the poo would go down the toilet and the liner would go into your bin. The alternative is the reusable ones, which are the micro fleece. Obviously, if there's poo on that, it's not as simple as, just throwing it away because you're kind of scraping it off. But that you wouldn't mean to be doing that until your baby starts on food. Milk only poo is so liquidy that, to be honest, you might be able to get a bit off, but most of that can go, you can sort of put it in your bucket or your wet bag and it will get dealt with in your washing machine. But yeah, these I don't recommend reusable disposable liners for younger babies, because I don't think they do as good a job of keeping babies dry. But there's certainly something that parents like to use, and for childcare purposes can help with nursery child. Like locally, nurseries are pretty pro cloth. There are some that are not, but it can just help them to learn to deal with the poo, because then they can just throw it away like they would with a disposable nappy.
Okay. And the other thing I'm just going to ask was, in terms of like volume of laundry.
Yeah.
Because someone gave us a bunch of the all-in-ones.
Yeah.
I started using them because I was just like, I guess every time they do a wee, you'd be basically laundering them. Whereas presumably if you've got the 2-in-ones, you can change the absorbent bit like a few times and then only change the casing like maybe daily or twice a day.
Yeah. You don't need to take the nappy off every time the baby's on a wee. So usually an all-in-one would last about 3 to 4 hours. If the baby's on a poo, the whole thing comes off. But any nappy, it should be able to absorb enough wee that you're not changing every half an hour. One of the things that I find is when people come to me, because obviously they're getting leaks, there are loads of reasons for that. One is that if you're buying second hand, actually, sometimes nappies are not always in the best condition, but obviously sometimes babies wee different amounts. You'll get some baby who will be in that nappy for hours, whereas another nappy baby might outwee that in 30 minutes. So babies wee different amounts. But you're right with the all-in-twos. The idea is, you use the same wrap for like a day, maybe half a day, and just change the inside bit, which absolutely reduces laundry. So different nappy systems do help with that. Most parents do, once they're up and running, would do not and out of the newborn stage. Most babies will be, it might be 6 or 7 nappies a day. So it might be you wash every other day or every third day. You can combine it with laundry, and that's if you're using full time. And not everyone does. People do a lot of mixed, like mixed disposables and cloth nappies. So it's absolutely what works for you, and that's part of that is the laundry. Making sure it's not overwhelming, really. And particularly, we should have sunshine today, but here we don't. In the depths of winter, or when it can take days for things to dry. So that's it's something else to factor in your choice of nappy.
Okay, thanks.
That was awesome. Nice. Go on, Sheila. I think you had a question next.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see Rachel's hand up. I was going to ask Claire, thank you for that, it's really, really helpful. I've been reading stuff about wet nappy pail bins and wet bags, and there's lots of different information on how best to wash. I know you mentioned earlier like a quick rinse and then in the machine, but how long could you keep them in a bin after rinsing, or what would you advise on that?
That's a really good question. So if we sort of rewind 30 or 40 years, and again, if you do speak to anybody who's used terry nappies, maybe on you or siblings, most parents, grandparents will talk about wet paling, because that's what happened with terries. Because terries are a piece of cotton, it's no elastic and no waterproofing, so they can withstand that soaking. Modern cloth nappies can't really, because of the waterproofing and the elastic. So what most people do, they'll take the nappy off and put into a bucket or a wet bag. Advice is changing all the time. So some groups or websites will talk to you about daily pre-washing, which I didn't do. I don't feel it's necessary. So that would be every day at some point, getting all the nappies out, giving them a rinse in your machine, putting them back in the bucket until you're ready to do your wash. At the moment, I would say it's leaving your nappies up to 3 days, because obviously the wee is starting to break down into ammonia, or urea into ammonia. And so that if they're in there's no thing wrong with giving a nappy a rinse or a little soak, but just putting them in a bucket with other liquid added partly isn't obviously, as I said, great for them, but as your babies grow and as they get a bit more mobile, and depending on where your bathroom is or where your bucket is, buckets are lockable, but some are not. And if you have a dog as well, the one thing you don't want is that to be discovered, because that bucket gets tipped over, and you can imagine. But also it's breeding ground for bacteria having nappies and that liquid in. So dry paling is fine. Some parents, you will use an airy bucket with no lid on. Some parents will use a enclosed bucket with a lid on. And wet bags, I have one here. These are great. I mean, they're just essentially waterproof bags. So you can buy them. If you don't use cloth nappies, they have so many other uses. I love these because they're great for muddy children. They're great for anything, you're going out and about and you need to change baby's clothes, but they're soiled, plonk it in a wet bag. And they're great also because they're perfect for travelling. You can hang it on the back of the door, a bit less obtrusive than the bucket. So yeah, I would say dry paling, leaving things no longer than 2 to 3 days. That, also when it's very hot, you might find you need to wash slightly more often. But that will also depend on how many nappies you're using. So if you're not using that many, pop them with something else and just make sure that they're washed.
Thank you.
No problem.
That was great. I never would have thought about the bag before. That's a brilliant.
Yeah, oh, they're great. I love them.
Yeah. I'll be getting one of those. I'm going to go in with my question, and then, guys, everyone else, of course. So I was given, Claire, a load of these, which are, what are they? They're Motheries, and I think they're a little bit old.
Yeah.
And I'm really up for giving them a whirl because they're quite big, and the little guy's getting big now, and I feel like they could be like a good fit. What would you recommend? I just need to get like a waterproof shower.
Yeah. Yes. So they're the one size. They're an interesting nappy because Motheries are a brand that have come back into popularity, but you can find it online on the Motheries website. Most cloth nappies have, for birth to potty nappies, have the studs down the front, but they don't quite. So you have to fold down the front to get it to fit on a little one. But yeah, a wrap over the top. So Motheries wraps are very popular and really hard to get hold of, but there are so many other brands. I mean, Little Lamb, Blueberry, Close Poppin' do a wrap. So you just want something birth to potty size, so it's going to be generous because they're quite a big nappy to go over the top, and then a liner, the stay dry bit if you want to keep his bottom dry. There's probably enough absorbency in there that you wouldn't need to add anything else like a booster right now.
That sounds brilliant. Okay, now that I understand the system, I can do it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
That's really, really helpful. Thank you. Ladies, other questions? Anybody else like to ask at any point? Da, da, da. I think we're good. Oh no, go Victoria.
Hi there. I'm so sorry,
Hello.
my reception cut out for a little part of it, so I missed. Perhaps maybe you went through different brands. But was there any kind of like top 5 brands or anything that you would recommend? I mean, I'd heard of like Bum Genius and Fuzzy Bums, and there's just so many different ones.
There are loads. At the moment, I think there are a lot of very, everyone has their own favourites. I have mine. If you ask a question on a group, you'll get 10 different responses. I think it depends on your budget. I think it depends on what shape size your baby is, and also, for example, have you got the drying space? Does it matter how long things take to dry? Simple things as well. Like, I didn't talk about this, but some nappies fasten with toppers and some with Velcro. Velcro I dislike from a Nappy library point of view, just because it wears. What I think it's really useful, if you can, is either to do a trial, or if you don't want to do a trial, that's fine. There are the Nappy Ladies one. Quite a lot of retailers do questionnaires, so they'll ask you things like, for example, random questions like how tall you and your partner are and what's important, so you can rank your priorities. So I love 2-part nappy systems. I think they're brilliant, but equally lots of parents don't like them because they're bulky. They feel like that they're going to be too big for their baby. At the moment, there are some brands that are particularly popular. So Baba & Boo is one, Mother Ease is another, Little Love Bum. Finding nappies sometimes can be tricky, partly because of lockdown and what's going on in the world and delayed stock, but also because cloth nappies are incredibly popular at the moment. So going on pre-loved groups, buying a few nappies secondhand to try them out can be a really brilliant way of sort of not spending too much, but being able to try different things if you're not able to use or don't want to use the library. But there's lots of different. I mean, I have the ones that I like, and I have nappies that I don't recommend. But when I do trial kits for people, it's very interesting when people return the kits to me and they've picked nappies they would never have considered. So I always find that quite interesting. It shows that you kind of, what you think you might like is not really what you do. Same with everything, baby, to be honest.
Thank you.
I feel like being a devil and asking you, Claire, what's I know you might not answer this, what's your favourite?
Oh, I will.
Go on.
Well, interestingly, so when my son was little, I used pockets in the day. I love pockets. I think they're brilliant. They're versatile, and I use Bum Genius, which are still around, and I use 2 parts at night, so Little Lamb. But like I think if I'm not going to have another child, but if I was, I would just go back to using Terry's. I think I absolutely get why people love all-in-ones. This nappy is £27. This nappy is like 23 for one nappy, versus a pack of Terry Squares and a few wraps, which you could get under £100. And I think I absolutely, lots of parents I know love nappies. They become collectors of them, and will be searching out the latest prints because they're cute. But equally, it's about practicality. They're to catch poo and wee. They need to be functional, and they need to fit in with your life. But yeah, I love pre-folds because they're just simple and straightforward. They dry. What's the things that are important are things like getting stuff washed and dried quickly and being effective on your baby. But yeah, I mean, this nappy I really like this one. This is 18. So there's a real price variation. I haven't got my cheaper ones here. There's pockets out there that are £6 or £7. So it's about thinking about your budget, thinking about kind of what's important, and then taking it from there, really.
I think it's really good to hear that the simplest muslin squares.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Amazing. Yeah, I actually kind of, when Indy was just newborn, I was really tempted to get some, and then then I thought, I don't know, I always thought it was too simple. how silly, you know? Oh.
And I think one of the things, obviously, hopefully, we're coming towards the end of lockdown, and hopefully we won't have to repeat that. I think one of the things, the lessons at the beginning, certainly, of lockdown, and for those of, you know, people who've had their babies, or maybe, you know, was that it changed our behaviour, because you kind of had to think, oh, actually, it's not going to be as easy as walking to the supermarket and picking up a pack of nappies. And that goes for everything. I mean, I try to talk about reusable products, not just nappies and wipes, but, you know, reusable period products and reusable bottles and all those kinds of things, because actually being able to just be at home with your baby, not have to think about, and I remember that feeling, the disposable nappies running out. I'm like, where have they gone? Surely we didn't go through that pack so quickly. But having things like the breast pads as well, you know, so you're not having to go to the shops when it's raining outside and you just don't feel like going out or whatever. Having those things where, even if it's just a backup, even if it's not going to be what you use day in, day out, having a few things there, learning just how to put on a muslin or a terry square. It's a real useful skill, because you never know when you might need it. And we would never have thought we would have been in this position that we're in coming out of now. So yeah, I loved muslins. They're great for little ones, particularly tiny ones.
Nice. Go on, Amy.
Hiya, how are you doing? Hi, Andy. So nice to see you too. Sorry I was late, other kids, etc, etc. My question is actually not about newborn, because this is my third. So I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and then this one on the way. Obviously that's a lot of nappies.
It is a lot.
Of nappies. So 3's nearly 4 and she's only in night nappies.
Okay.
1's heading towards 2 and he's decided that he is ready to toilet train and likes the toilet, so he's off doing that. What have you come across many people that have transitioned over at that age? I'm not really worried about the newborn stage. Like, I can sort that out, you know, if I choose to go down this route. But I'm just kind of thinking along the lines of, especially the 1 to 2-year-old, you know, can he get, because he's been in disposables and they do have a penchant for taking them off, and you know, usual, you know, it's, oh my god, it's a dirty protest in the room, that sort of stuff. Do people successfully transition across, that they're not like, oh my god, this is new, let's take it off, let's, I'm just thinking like the volume of having 3.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because yes, they do, and so I often get messages from people who have got babies over a year, and that's been more frequent in the last couple of years. And in fact, just someone's messaged me recently, because it can take time, and actually sometimes people do it with their older children in preparation for using cloth with their newborn or their one on the way. Couple of things to consider is, often changing is a nightmare on a mobile child. So anything that pulls up is a plus, because often they'll stand there. So there are pull-up cloth nappies, or nappies that can be made to pull up. Poppers are your friend. Poppers are much harder. They're not impossible to get off, but they're much harder to get off than a Velcro fastened cloth nappy. The other thing that's your friend is patterns. So appealing to your child's likes. So, you know, there are at the moment, I mean, different patterns, different colours, things with you know, different animals on. So having those kind of thoughts about, okay, my child likes X, I'll look for nappies with that on. But yeah, it does take a little bit of a shift, because you're already into probably mega wee territory. So the nappy is going to be slightly bulkier, but on an older child, it doesn't look as bulky because they're bigger. But some parents just transition just for night. Some children, you know, they'll be in nappies for at night time for quite some time sometimes. And just having to buy pull-ups ongoing can be a bit of an expense. So that might be one way of doing it. Just leave the daytime, but just have one cloth nappy at night. So there are different things to think about, and different ways that you can kind of integrate them in. First potty nappies fit to around 15 kilograms. So 5 to 50. So potentially you could have sibling sharing, but also there are increasing numbers of nappies that will fit beyond that. with the recognition that lots of babies are and children are in nappies for a lot longer.
Yeah.
And night. So yeah, there are different options you could try. But if he's wanting to use potty or toilet, and you know that's going
no potty.
okay.
Potties are for babies. He wants to.
Oh,
he wants the toilet.
Perfect, because the potty to toilet transition was the hardest.
Oh,
potty
yeah.
was fun. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, they still, to some children, they still look like baby nappies. So the pull up, that's where the pull up comes in, but they're not the best for really heavy wetting kids.
Yeah.
But
I think maybe the pattern might be a good option, because he wants to put his sister's pants on. He just wants to be that bit more grown up. So if I can somehow tread that line, that would be good.
Yeah. No, there's if you go and you can search, and some of the groups are brilliant. You know, some people have so much knowledge and they'd be able to tell you exactly where to get that nappy on which has that pattern.
Yeah.
So that's worth one option.
Thank you.
No problem.
That was awesome, guys. Do you know what? We're already over time. And so we have to let Claire go. But I just wanted to say thank you so much, Claire.
No problem at all.
It was brilliant. It was brilliant. And yeah, amazing. And just share where everyone can find you again.
So if you want to chat with me, or you can message, if you're on Facebook, you can find me at Wolf and Forest Cloth Nappy Library, and my sister group, which is Wolf and Forest Cloth Bums, which is for advice and buying nappies locally. There's a link to there from there to my email. I'm also on Instagram, but also Wolf and Forest Cloth Nappy Library YouTube as well. So there's various ways, and just pop me messages. I'm more than happy to chat. You don't have to use the library in terms of hiring from me to talk to me about nappies. But the videos kind of go into more depth about some of the stuff we've talked about. So yeah, come and find me there.
Yay.
Claire, sorry, did you say there was demos on your YouTube channel?
Yes. So it's basically, I don't know how many, 10 videos. So it goes right from a little bit about newborn cloth napping up until kind of older, including sort of night nappies and stuff. There's nothing, but it's a work in progress, because we've had to put that in because we can't do. But I also do Zoom demos. So if people are interested, that's about an hour. But to be honest, it's kind of most of what we've discussed here is kind of covered in there, really. Yeah.
That is an amazing resource, Claire. Thank you. I'm going to share that as well, just in generally.
Thank you.
But, let's unmute and clap, guys, just to say thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Lovely to see you all, and thank you for having me.
Oh, pleasure. See you again.
Take care. Bye. Bye, everyone.
That's it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.